Welcome to the Filmmaker's Playbook. My name is Jason Branagan and this is a podcast all about filmmaking. On today's show, I talk to actor Amanda Abbington. Amanda's credits include BBC's Sherlock, the Netflix #1 series Desperate Measures, Harlan Coben's smash hit original series Safe, Mr. Selfridge, Wolfe, and much more. In our conversation, Amanda shares her advice for young actors, and we discuss the importance of discipline and how to keep your acting muscle in shape when you're not working, why you need to know your lines back to front, being a conduit for your character and letting the text do the work, learning every day and being truthful in performance. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Thank you for listening. Amanda Abbington, it is so lovely to speak to you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much. I'm very excited. Thank you.
Me too. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, good. It's coming into summer. I can feel spring inching, so it's nice. It's lovely. I'm not very good in cold nights, cold, dark nights. I'm not very good with, but yeah.
I'm the exact same, and it's so nice to see blue skies for a change.
It makes everybody happier as well. I was out the other day and it was like a really lovely day. And everyone's just brighter and they're more cheery. I think, we're predisposed to being happy when the sun's out. So it's good.
So you started your screen career, as far as I can tell, correct me if I'm wrong, with The Bill.
Yeah. Yeah, that was basically when that was out. That was your training ground for television work and film work, because you were never taught that in drama school. No film technique or television technique. So that was your kind of, like when you'd leave, you'd either do The Bill or Casualty and things like that. So that's where you got your, chops to learn how to do television and film acting.
So what came before The Bill then, in terms of what was it about acting specifically that drew you to it as a profession?
Right. I think I'd always been a bit, I know this is going to sound weird, but I'm an only child. So I would spend a lot of time on my own. And so when you're on your own as a kid, I think you tend to make stuff up and you kind of make stories up and characters and things. So I'd do that when I was a little girl. And I just, as I got older, I did dancing, but I wasn't very good. I wasn't a good dancer. I went to dance school for a year and I was just hopeless and it was dreadful. So the drama teacher there said to me, I think what would be good is if you tried acting, because I think you have a bit of a talent for it. And I was like, really? Okay. And then when I started doing acting pieces, I realized, oh, this is what I want to do. And it came I don't like to sort of like be big-headed, but it did come quite naturally. Like I had a natural, like I kind of knew how to do it, if you see what I mean. Like I didn't have to think about it too much. That, the instincts for each piece I did came quite naturally. So I thought, oh, maybe I can do this. And so I went to a little tiny drama school in Hitchin, which is now closed down, but was taught by a wonderful man called John Gardner. And he taught me everything I know. But I think, I think with acting, a lot of it is instinct. A lot of it is natural instinct.
What were you learning, I suppose, then in that drama school and with John?
So for me, it gave me confidence and my belief in my ability, because when you have somebody telling you you can do this and it gives you a platform to perform, because I'd never performed before that in front of people. So we'd learn how to we'd go out. It was really funny because he'd make us write, like, we did a thing called World War II in 40 minutes basically, and it was this kind of 40-minute show. And you'd have all the old songs from World War II and, all the select, like the people that were famous in the 1940s. And we'd go around to old people's homes. So we'd set up our little set and we'd sing all the songs. And it just gave you an idea of what performing was in front of an audience, even, it was like in old folks' homes. But it was such a wonderful kind of interactive thing. And I think that's what John taught me, is that have the belief in yourself to do it and dare to fail. And you have to be resilient. You're going to get knocked back a hell of a lot of times. And I've been knocked back so many times in my career. And you have to bounce back and not take it personally. And I think that's what John taught me.
So as a performer then, you mentioned the difference between theatre and screen acting. What was it like then, or what were the differences, I suppose, for you going from that world into television?
Well, it was sort of like, it was because it was a completely unknown quantity. Like I'd never experienced a film set before, so I didn't know how it worked. And with theatre, you have like, when you start a play, you have a six-week process of doing the same thing over again. So you have this play that you're given, blank canvas, where you can build up your character, and you have the time in a rehearsal room to do that and to try things, and they can sometimes not work. And it's a process that you go through, and it's long and it's creative, and you can kind of build your character yourself with the director. Whereas with television, you're just literally thrown in. You have to, know all your lines, immediately, as opposed to learn them over a period of time with theatre. And you don't get a say in really how the edit happens. So once you've done your thing, and you still have to hand it over and say, okay, that's my performance. And then there's 5 or 6 takes of that, and each one can be slightly different. So you don't know which one they're going to pick. So you're kind of at the mercy of the director and the editor. So you have to be kind of confident in yourself and your ability to convey the story, and then hand it over and say, okay, it's up to you now. And they can either make you look really good or really terrible, because they can, you're at the mercy of an editor and a director. Whereas with theatre, you go through that process of working in a rehearsal room, and then you do it every night in front of an audience, and every night it's different because it's an organic process, and the audience will give you a different feeling and vibe every night. So it's nuanced. Whereas with film, it's a little bit more like flat bang, off you go, bye, and then you're out, But both are wonderful, and both mediums are so exciting because I find them very, very different, and there's a different approach to each of them.
Actors have said to me in the past, in terms of theatre versus television or film, one of the great joys, I suppose, of theatre being that if you feel like you're off tonight, you can go out and do better tomorrow.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I worked with Vicky Featherstone, who was at the artistic director at the Royal Court for years, and I did a play with her. And the one piece of advice that I give to young actors all the time, and it's 3 words, and it's called cancel and continue, because you can't hold on to, if you've made a mistake, you can't hold on to that. You have to cancel it and put it there, and then just carry on and just plow through. Because the minute you're holding on to the thing that you've made the mistake with, it's like it throws everything else off. You have to just go, right, I made that mistake. No, can't go back. Let's go. Let's forge through. And it was a really good piece of advice for theatre.
Yeah, it's great. And a bunch of people have actually said something that is somewhat similar, particularly performers who've been on the podcast, and it's just that let it go. Because
I think most actors, it's a very empathetic career. You have to be empathetic to your surroundings, and you're very vulnerable. I think you can be very, you're giving to an audience, so you can feel very exposed. And the minute you make a mistake, you can either hold on to that, and then the whole thing will unwind, and it does. It invariably does if you hold on to the mistake, or you just say, "No, I've done it." And it's a difficult discipline. Because if we're our own worst enemy, actors, we really are. We're our own worst critics and our own worst enemies, because we can have a tendency to go, oh, that was terrible, and then unravel. So you just have to go, no, I won't make that mistake tomorrow night. And you never do. You never make the same mistake twice. That's the other thing. You'll make a mistake somewhere else. It's always the same, but completely different.
In the beginning of your career, and maybe you've covered this in some sense in what we've just been talking about, but I was going to ask you, what was the most difficult or the hardest part of your craft for you to learn and to be able to, I guess, action? You mentioned instinct being super important and feeling very comfortable in that space. So maybe there wasn't anything major, but I was curious anyway, just in case there was any particular challenges in terms of craft that you encountered early on.
I suppose that there is a discipline that you have to maintain and cultivate, because a lot of the time, actors can be out of work for big periods of time, and when you're out of work, you can tell yourself that you're never going to work again, and you have those demons in your head saying, well, that's it, that was your last ever job. So you have to tell yourself that you have a right to be there, and this is all transitory, and you will work again. It's fine. Don't worry, it's fine. But there's also this feeling you have to keep your muscle memory busy. Like you have to keep it. It's like a muscle. Acting. It's an acting muscle. So my discipline was and is that when I'm not working, I read everything I can. I reread plays. I reread and I keep learning. I learn things like I'll learn a monologue in a play, just because it keeps the mind active and it keeps it like an athlete. So I tend to. That's what I would say to young actors who are who aren't working at the time, is that make sure that you keep going to acting classes and that you keep that learning lines thing active, because that can when I've been in that position. I've done I've not worked for a while and then I've gone and done a play, and it's been really hard to learn the lines again, because it's like going to the gym. It's the same principle, I think. And that might only be for me, but I speak to a lot of actors and they will say, oh, yeah, no, when you haven't worked for a while, getting back into learning lines is tricky, because it's part of your brain that hasn't worked for a while. So that's the discipline for me, is to, even when you're not working, is to keep working for yourself and keeping your acting muscle flexed and ready to go at any moment. Because it's one phone call that you get and then you go, you're doing this now. And you're like, oh, okay. So it's always being ready and prepared.
I think that's brilliant advice, and it's a great analogy. If you are an athlete, you train your body and you stay ready and you make sure you're ready to go when you need to. When you are rereading plays, in that sense, are you rereading them and breaking them down like you would a script, or thinking about how you would play in that play, or is it just rereading them for the love of absorbing it?
I think it's all three. I think what it's always good to go back and read. Like I've just reread. There's a brilliant trilogy of plays by Alfred de Musset, and one of those plays is called Don't Fall with Love, and it's a beautiful one-act play. And I did it when I was younger. I did it for my audition piece, one of the monologues in it, and I hadn't really gone back to it for like 25 years. And I was, funny enough, I was reading it the other day because both my children want to be actors and they're both kind of forging their little paths. Grace is 16, Joe's 18. And I gave it to Grace to have a look at, and because it's a younger part. And I reread it and I found things in it 25 years later that I'd never seen before. And what's lovely is that when you because it is you're constantly learning as an actor. When you to say that you know everything is very arrogant. Like, oh, I'm an actor now. It's like, well, but you have to keep learning. This is one of the professions where you will always find something else in a bit of text if you go back to it. And that's what I find whenever I reread a play. I always go, oh my God, that's what that meant. And so you can change it up. And yeah, so I kind of like to go back to them, and now as I'm getting older, actually, what I'm tending to do is in my head work out how I would direct it, because I'd like to get into directing now as I'm getting older. And I've directed a few things for my son's A-level classes. I've gone into their school, and it's been so lovely watching that process and being that side of it. So now I read plays with the idea of how I do it myself, which is exciting. I find it exciting.
Brilliant. To touch on the idea of going back and finding something different in the work each time, in a sense, I suppose, is that I think if you are doing life right and you are growing and learning, the context that you're approaching work from will change.
Yeah, and I think, you can apply that to your life, like you just said, the minute you start going, well, I know everything, I know how that play, I know about that. And the minute you do that, you shackle yourself to kind of, not being open to all sorts of different wonderful things. And I think, we can take that into real life as well. But certainly, yeah, when you reread something and you find new things, it's very exciting. It's really exciting still. And to be excited by text still after, it's great. It's really lovely.
You mentioned the need to be resilient, dare to fail. And you also mentioned the idea of those demons and the doubts that creep in when you aren't working. I would love to pull that thread just in terms of the process of moving from maybe a day player in shows up to a series regular, and how many times or whether you ever had massive doubts about the industry or thinking about, I can't do this, I got to step away, it's not working, and how important that resilience and perseverance was in your career in terms of where you are now.
What's difficult, I think, is that because, like I keep saying, actors are very empathetic creatures, because they kind of have to suck everything up, and they're very, if you're a good actor, you take everything and you use it, and all your emotions are very surface, so you can access them really easily, which means that when you don't get a job and when you haven't worked for a while, you can take it personally. And I have to say, I say this to young actors, that if you can put it into perspective, and you have to keep one foot very, very firmly in reality, in the real world, and remember that, when you go up for a job and you don't get it, you're not the only one that got it. And I know that's not a great example, but only one person can get the job, and there'll be about 8 or 10 people that are going up for it. And the fact that you're going up for it in the first place is really, really good. You're already in a really good position, because you're being thought of, and that's something. And I think you have to remember as well, and this is something that I've learned, that your career can change in literally a second. Like, you cannot work. I've had this happened to me so many times, where I haven't worked for a significant period of time, 6 months. The longest I was out of work was 18 months. I didn't do anything. And I thought, well, what? I changed agents. I got new headshots. I was working, trying to get people to see me, trying to, anything, and nothing was happening. Nothing. And then one day my agent rang and said, oh, you've got a job audition for an 8-part comedy on Channel 4. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try and nail this. I'm going to try and get this, because I haven't worked for 18 months. And, I went through 3 or 4 auditions, and then I finally got it. And it was that's what I'm saying. It's like, it can just be one phone call that can change your life dramatically. So that's what I mean about always being prepared and being ready to go for that job. So you're being, match fit for it. And then it ebbs and flows, and you'd rather be on the roller coaster than the carousel. Do you know what I mean? It's the nature of the beast. And I think that's why it's like, you're a circus performer, you're a traveler, you do all these wonderful things because it's exciting, and you wouldn't do it if you didn't love it. And that includes, the low points as well, So I just think it's just knowing that it's not personal. It's never personal, really.
I was speaking to someone recently, and they were talking about missing out on a role, and it really came down to, yes, you absolutely could do it, but while we kind of screen test you with the other person we've cast, you're kind of just too tall.
Yeah, that's literally it. Yeah,
you cannot control that.
You can't. And also, directors and producers sometimes have an idea of what they want anyway. So a casting director will put you up as a kind of idea of what they think would work, but the producer and the director can already have an idea in their mind, and that's nothing to do with you or your talent, or your ability, or your likability. It's literally just to do with the fact that they have a vision that they have, and at that time you're just not part of that vision that they see. So I instill in young actors that it's never personal. It just isn't, unless you have a hideous reputation, in which case, you need to sort that out. But by and large, it's usually just down to taste, or just because you don't fit that specific criteria. But you will. That's the thing. So if you keep going and you don't give up, at some point something has to give, and you do get a job. You just do. I know so many actors that persevere and then get a wonderful little theatre job or a telly job, and it's just like, great, I'm validated. But that's why we do it. We're performers. That's part of the job.
You mentioned embracing and having to embrace the lows, and I often think as well that, as horrible as they are, very important, because careers are built on a pile of rejection.
Yeah.
That's kind of just a side note. But my next question, you had a bunch of series regular roles before Dream Team.
Yeah.
That was a much bigger show in terms of volume. You did over 40 eps.
Yeah, I forgot. Oh, God. Dream Team. Wow.
I know.
That was a weird one.
Well, let's get into it.
I'd never worked like that before, I have to say.
That's what I was going to ask, because I think in those early seasons, it was more of a kind of soap format, half-hour episodes, 2 per week, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I was curious what the schedule was like and what you learned as an actor working on that show when there is so much work to do in such a short space of time.
Yeah, it was like conveyor belt. It felt very conveyor belt. It didn't, like, no disrespect to Dream Team, but it did. There wasn't what it taught me was learning how to turn things around very quickly and learn lines very quickly and be able to kind of change scenes very quickly. And it was just very relentless in terms of quantity, if you see what I mean. So it was like, it felt very no time to breathe. Like, we need to get this out, It was like, it was what it was. It was like a salacious kind of, it was like a soap. It was a soap. And soap opera actors, like when you see people in long term, so it's like EastEnders and Coronation Street, the turnaround that they have is incredible. And they're learning 7 or 8 scripts a week and moving to different locations. And it's like a military operation. So it's a different form of acting. It feels like guerrilla acting as opposed to kind of, taking your time over a big Netflix thing that you can spend like 3 days on one scene. The luxury of that is taken away from you with that sort of acting, and it's admirable. And what it taught me is, like, you have to be on top of your lines all the time and be focused, and you can't sort of just do that half-assed. You have to commit to it. You have to commit to the process of learning your lines and then getting up at 5 o'clock and driving to the set, because also when you're doing a thing like a soap opera, I don't think you get cars and things like the luxury of kind of doing bigger productions is you get a car pick you up and it takes you to the set and you get, but this, I think, like, you're in the car at 5, drive to the base, get yourself there, get yourself in the chair, get yourself out. And yeah, hard work, it's hard work.
Were there any lessons then that kind of working in that environment that you carried with you into future work, be they good ones or positive, like, oh, I should do this, or I definitely don't want to be doing this?
Yeah, I just think, I feel like it gives you a discipline, certainly gives you a discipline. You have to be disciplined in this profession. My page 1 of rules, the first one is learn your lines. Learn your lines backwards, forwards, be on top of them, because then that takes away nearly all of the nervousness and the anxiety. Because if you know what you're doing, then you're in control of your craft, essentially. Do you know what I mean? So Dream Team certainly taught me that.
I love that, and I'm so grateful that you said it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I always feel that if you really want to actually go off book or to improvise, you really need to know what the scene is, and learning the lines is a big part of that. So
they're your tools. That's your tools. So once you have those, there is a raft of options that you can play with, because you are so on top of your lines that you can step out of them at any moment and come back into them, and you can change it up, you can speed it up, you can slow it down, you can do whatever you want, as long as you know those lines back to front and forwards and up and down and wherever. That's the most important thing, is knowing every single line and then being able to kind of play with them. And also, I will say sometimes, because sometimes I'm saying that, sometimes lines are quite hard to learn. And usually when they're hard to learn, it means it's not that well written. Do you see what I mean? Because sometimes just things don't go in your head because it doesn't scan. And And that's not your fault. I said, it's really not your fault. It's just the fault of the writing sometimes. But yeah, if you can learn the lines back to front and up and down, that's what I would urge any actor to do, because then you are completely in control of what you're doing. And you have a confidence then, you're confident in yourself,
Definitely. And I also appreciate that sentiment that sometimes the reason lines don't go in is because they maybe don't work as well as they should.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can see, you can tell bad writing if you can't learn it. That's, and I talked to a lot of my fellow friends who are actors, and we all say the same thing. It's like, have you ever had a time when the lines have not gone in? And it's like, yeah, just because the writing's not been great, So no matter how much you learn it, you'll get to that one place. You'll always get to one specific place where you go, oh, I don't know what's coming next. And it's usually because it doesn't scan right, or it's just doesn't make sense,
Yeah.
Writing is so important. Good writing is so important.
Absolutely. From everyone's perspective as well, because it's much cheaper to fix problems on the page than it is when you're up and running.
Yeah, absolutely. You can take, sometimes like hours to get through a scene if you do it properly, but one little tweak would just like put everything right, It's always good to work with writers who are open to having their script slightly just tweaked,
I agree. You touched on your comedy work when you mentioned being cast in a Channel 4 comedy. I was curious because you have moved seamlessly between comedy and drama without ever, I think, being defined by either, as far as I can tell. And for actors, I think it can be easy to maybe get pigeonholed in a sense of being typecast. So you've done comedy, so we're only going to offer you comedy, or vice versa. If you've done drama, maybe we don't trust you with comedy because we haven't seen you do it. I was wondering, did you encounter any difficulties moving between those two genres?
No, I don't know. No, in terms of my performance, I don't think I have. I think comedy is far more difficult to do than the serious stuff, because you have to sort of have funny bones. You have to understand comedy, and I think you have to kind of understand what's funny. And comedy is so, it's such a personal thing. Like, some people find, Bernard Manning funny, or whoever, and other people find, Louis C.K. funny, or Ricky Gervais, all these people, and then other people go, no, that's not fun, it's offensive. And so it's a very nuanced form of storytelling, comedy, because you have to remember that not everyone's going to find you funny. So trying to be funny never works. Once you play the comedy for the comedy, it won't work. I think the more you play comedy seriously, if you see what I mean, the more funny it is. That's what I've learned, I think. You can heighten it, and you can kind of, sort of amplify it, your performance. Sort of the key to making things funny is rooting everything in truth. And I think that's why I like doing both, because both comedy and drama have to be rooted in truth. And also they run cheek by jowl. Life is funny and tragic at the same time. You can be laughing hysterically at something and then weeping the next second. And that's the beauty of kind of combining the two and being able to match those two things together. It's life, basically, comedy and tragedy.
It doesn't sound like then, if you are prepping to do some comedy or you're prepping to do drama, that your process or the work you are doing to get ready changes. You approach them from the same perspective.
Completely, yeah. I approach every job I do. I approach it as telling a story. That's my, I'm telling us. I'm gonna tell this story to the best of my ability and as truthfully and honestly as possible. And the minute I think you do it truthfully, then it automatically opens up a floodgate of making it slightly easier, and then the audience feel more open to receiving it if you're being truthful with the text, because that's all we're doing. We're telling stories. But the minute you add layers of what you think is funny or what you think is tragic, can sometimes feel fake. So I just try and do it as naturally as possible and let the text do the work. Yeah. If the writing is good, it'll just be symbiotic and it'll just happen. The minute you start kind of like adding stuff or just, affecting it and using affectation, I think it becomes like, oh no, I don't believe this now. You can watch Judi Dench and everything she does is authentic and truthful because she's just letting it happen. The minute you start thinking, I have to do this and I have to make it like this, I have to cry or I have to be angry, it loses its authenticity. It's just letting it flow.
I love that you mentioned the idea of, I have to cry. And I often find in terms of language, let's say angry as a result, angry is different for everyone as well.
Mm.
One person's interpretation of what angry looks like is vastly different than another. So I love that idea of, again, just letting it happen.
I think sometimes it's good, not all the time, but sometimes it's good not to read the stage direction sometimes. Because if if it says she becomes angry, it's like, well, no, not yet, maybe, not yet. It'll come if the writing in the writing, you can feel it getting angry, then it will happen. But, gets angry, well, we'll see,
Yeah.
It's more, like I say, it's more of an organic process. And I think, I keep going back to being truthful and being honest in performances. You have to be truthful and trust your instinct as to where that journey's going, I think. And that's instinct. You can't teach that, I don't think. You can never teach instinct. It's in either you have it or you don't.
Would one way of potentially putting that idea be almost like don't chase the emotion that is on the page just because?
Yeah, I think so. I find that when you just let the text, I did a play by Florian Zeller, and it was about a young boy who was deeply depressed and his parents couldn't help him. It was such an emotional journey, and every night we did it was completely different because of, like I said, because the audience, every night was different. So you'd feed off from the energy of the audience, but there was real heightened states of emotion in that, but it never felt forced because the writing was so brilliant and so truthful that you couldn't do anything but be truthful to the text as well. So I think, like I say, good writing will just guide an actor anyway, I think, and a good director will just let that happen. Like just organically just let that flow within the text. And so you don't have to push it if the writing's good. You just don't. It just happens.
I was going to ask you then about your process for building character. So when you do get the script, and I guess largely maybe dictated also by the quality of the writing and the script, but how do you approach the process of building a character and beginning that prep for playing a new role?
Well, it depends. Like if I'm doing a theatre play, like I'm going to start a theatre play in June about, it's heavy, serious subject matter. It's about a woman whose daughter gets raped in America. She's a journalist. And so what, it's, I read it, and then I reread it, and then I break down each, there's lots of big speeches, and I break down each speech, and I try not to over prepare. I think I'm not one of these people that can spend ages finding a character and sort of like researching, unless it's like an actual, non-fictional character. If it's somebody in real life, I will research their background. But by and large, if it's a fictional character, I like to keep things really fresh, and I like to keep things spontaneous. And I think if I will learn my lines and then go away and then come back a few days later and have a look at it. But usually it will happen in the room. In terms of theatre, it'll happen in the room when we're up and working. And with sort of film and television, usually I'll just make sure I'm on top of my lines and then see what happens. I'm not particularly methody person. I'm not anti-method. I think, whatever works for anybody it gets them, the performance is wonderful. But I'm more of a kind of, let's just see how this goes. I'm going to play this character. I know the beats of the character, and I know the character description, and I know who she is and what she's, from the text and from the breakdown. Let's just see what happens and see what comes out.
Seems like a way to absolutely ensure that there will be some spontaneity there as well, and you're not going in with judgments or preconceived ideas of.
I never judge my character. Like, I'll never kind of, I don't necessarily think you have to love your character. I don't think, I think you have to just respect your character and sort of respect who that person is. But I just think in terms of process, again, I trust my instincts because, they've touched wood. They tend not to let me down. And I think I usually go the right way,
So I have two questions on two characters that I think tie into that idea maybe. So in Sherlock, in series 4, when we learn that Mary is an assassin, based on timelines, as far as I can tell, series 3 was wrapped maybe before 4 was commissioned.
Yeah.
Now, did you know all of Mary's backstory? I feel like it's alluded to when Sherlock can't read her, but I was curious about whether you knew that what was potentially going to happen in series 4 if it went while you were playing Mary in series 3. And I asked this question because I had a situation where characters were established in a show and had been playing these people for a long period of time and didn't have a key piece of information, which was that they are drug dealers. So when they got scripts that said, by the way, you're big time drug dealers, they were like, what?
Yeah. That's always, when you're throwing a curveball like that, it's a bit like, why didn't you tell me? But I don't know. See, I say that. I'm not entirely sure, in all honesty, if you were to really ask yourself the question, whether or not you would play it that differently, because, like, I knew that Mary had a secret, and I knew that she was an assassin, and I knew they told me that when I got the job, and they said, this is the story, this is her story arc. But I don't think I would have played it any more knowingly or less knowingly if I hadn't have known. Like, I think, I keep going back to instincts, and I think, that's what I tend to draw on a lot. So when you read a script and when you're told, oh, by the way, Mary's an assassin, you think, okay, well, I'm just going to play her fairly neutral, and, because she's got to hide that anyway. That has to be really repressed anyway. So even if I was kind of playing it like twirly moustache, kind of, it wouldn't be authentic, and it wouldn't be genuine. She's a master of, she's supposed to be this assassin who's hides in the shadows. So I'm going to just hide her in the shadows and just be as normal as possible. So I think I wouldn't have played it any differently either way. I think, yeah.
The next one I was going to ask about then, again, pulling that same thread, is Safe. And knowing, again, I'm guessing all those scripts were ready before you went.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
You knew where it was going. And how then you potentially emotionally track yourself through that show and not give away anything in terms of Sophie's guilt, spoiler alert, but I rewatched during the week, knowing we were going to talk, and that was my second watch. And I do think there's so much nuance, and now watching it with the knowledge, I think, one, brilliantly performed, but on second watch, I feel like there is these tiny, tiny, subtle hints in your eyes and on your face very, very occasionally. And I only could potentially pick up on them, and maybe it's just something I'm projecting.
No, I think you're right. You're right. There were like I worked I worked closely with the directors on, like, the couple of directors we had on it, and we would say, let's just give her a slightly longer look at her son at that point, because she knows what she's just done. So there would be points that we would, they were picked out within the script as well. You know, Danny's script was just so brilliant, and we sort of picked various points out of that to just not to telegraph it. Like I knew, you know, Harlan and Danny told me very early on that I was the protagonist, she was the protagonist, and it was, you know, it was such a wonderful part to play because she's supposed to be this, you know, she's the least likely person that would have killed a kid. You know, she's this upstanding member of, you know, the community. She's a police officer, but she has to save her son. You know, she has to save her. So there were points in it that we all worked on, but that was a joy, that to be able to do that, and then to have that reveal at the end, and even when she walks through the police station handcuffed, and everyone's like, "What?" Yeah, that's a good piece of writing. That's one of those pieces of writing that just is a page turner, and you just go, "This is a gift for everybody in it." Actually, it was just wonderfully. The characters in that were just brilliant. I think any character-driven piece of theatre or television, I think, is infinitely more interesting than plot. That's my personal opinion. I think you invest so much more in characters than you do in plot. Plot's great, but it has to be driven by strong or interesting characters.
I couldn't agree more. And I think those scripts that are page turners are what everyone is hunting for. I recently read Succession season 1, and that pilot, Jesse Armstrong's pilot, I just devoured it.
That, I think, is a perfect example of character-based drama, because you hate them and you love them and you want them to be okay and you want them to be destroyed. It's Shakespearean in its beauty, I think. It's so, again, nuanced. And you can go from 1 minute loving those kids to wanting to throttle them, and that is testimony to just fabulous writing. It's perfect. It's a perfect example. Absolutely character-based. Because actually, if you think about it, the plot, there's not really a plot. Not really. It's just all about their lives and how they're interwoven and how they hate each other and love each other, and they're ruthless and disgusting and wonderful. The plot is not it's not as strong as the characters. It's perfect.
Speaking of scripts, how do you make choices on what you do nowadays?
How do I make choices? If the script's really good, like, again, if it's character driven, then I will absolutely take it on. And if it's interesting, like I'll do like a little cameo role of something if I think it's really exciting and fun. And I'll do like 3 lines in something if I think it's the script's good and the character's great. Yeah, it's wonderful. That's how I do it.
Script first.
Yes, always script first, always script first, always script.
After script, then, are you looking at maybe the whole package, or are you or will you then look at who's directing? And
I think it's all like, the writing, and then it's like, you know, who else is attached. It's always lovely when you see people that you love and admire that are attached. You go, oh my God, this is great. And you want me? It's so lovely. I'm still always very bowled over and honoured and flattered when somebody asks me if I want to do one of their projects. Always. That never goes away. Like if I get an offer through and I like it and I'm like, really, they want me? That's so nice. Yes, please. You know, I'm never sort of like, yes, they should be offering me a job. I'm always like, thank you so much. I still sometimes feel a little bit of a fraud, you know, but it's, you know, that's good. It's good to be humble, I think, and it's good to feel you have a bit of humility still. I'm still very, very shocked and staggered that I'm still asked to do lovely things. It's lovely, you know.
do you tape, or do you go straight to offer?
Yeah, always. I'm always like, I think it's good. I think it's good to audition still. I think it keeps your feet firmly on the ground still, because it's such a precarious profession, and every now and again, you know, and I'm always asked to self-tape, of course. It's good. I think it keeps you grounded. You have to be grounded in this industry. You have to keep a firm, sensible head on your shoulders, because you can start believing that you're fabulous all the time. And, once you start believing that, I think you become slightly inauthentic and untruthful. I'm fabulous. Are you really? Okay. I've never thought I'm fabulous. I've always thought, I'm very lucky and privileged to be in this position.
And with taping, do you enjoy that process? I know there still seems to be massive benefits, but some downsides and kind of mixed feelings on whether we should still be taping. I was curious as to whether you enjoy being able to tape as opposed to always having
There's a big debate, isn't there, at the moment? Olivia Colman, bless her, came out and said, self-tapes are, they're scary. I think self-tapes, it took a lot of time to get used to them for me. I love doing them now. But I also love being in a room and meeting people face to face and being able to kind of be directed by the actual director, as opposed to thinking of my own take on it, because sometimes that can be completely misjudged. But I think if there's a happy balance of the two, I don't see a problem. I think, the way forward, of course, is going to be self-tapes, because it's just easier. I think you have to bite the bullet and just go, look, this is the way it is now. I'm going to make the best of this and make the best self-tape that I can, other than, being grudgingly doing it. I think you can't do that. You've just got to go, okay, this is the way it is. I'm going to self-tape and I'm going to nail it. And I think that, my son's actually, he's 18 now and he's just doing his A-levels, but he's starting to act and he's been doing a few self-tapes. So working with him and directing him and sort of helping him with his has been lovely, actually. It's lovely. He loves self-tapes. He doesn't want to be in the room with people. He's very nervous about it, which is funny. He hates being in the room with directors and stuff because he feels very nervous and self-conscious, whereas a self-tape, he can sort of express himself more. So I think it's horses for courses, really. But I don't mind either way. Just, if it gets me the job, it's great.
100%. You mentioned directors and in that self-tape process, being in the room, being directed by the director. So I would love to ask you about directors. Actors get notes, feedback maybe on the floor in some capacity. I'm curious about what kind of notes you as an actor would have for directors, or what would you like directors to know or consider about performers?
It's always nice when I work with a director when they take the time to rehearse the scene and with the actors in the room without anybody else. So, and I've been very lucky, actually. I've worked with some incredible directors who do that they'll clear the floor and then we'll be in the space for as long as we need in order to kind of get the tone of what we're looking for and stuff. And I think that's, it's always very nice when you don't feel like you are just an extra bit of set, that the director's only looking at the shots. By all means, I love it when they talk about the shots, but it's, it's nice to feel like you're important to the director and the director wants to work with you. And so, and luckily I've only ever really worked with directors who do that. I've worked with lovely, and I call them actors directors, because they take the time to go through the text and go through it as many times as you like and play with this stuff and play with the scene. And I think that's what I love. That's what I would ask directors to do, is to just be mindful of the fact that, that we're not just like moving props. We're actually kind of, it's lovely to interact with directors and play in the space before the cameras come in and the camera rehearsal happens. I've worked with many directors who are very, very good at that and who just love that process. I think that has to be part of a director's process, is because that's what you're looking at. Essentially, that's what you're looking at as a viewer when you watch a film or a piece of television, is that you're not watching the scene going, oh, look, that camera angle's good. You're watching the performance. And I love actors, directors. I do think they're vitally important.
I think it's a great piece of advice or just knowledge, because also in a world where so many of the opportunities to get into television come from soap and continuing drama that is frenetic, and in those worlds oftentimes it can be a case of we've 10 minutes to do the scene and complete the day, so let everyone just stand there, camera there, let's go. I think directors need to be diligent and consistent in ensuring that they have that time.
And I completely understand that. I know that there is a time frame for, you have to get a certain amount of pages done a day. And but it is lovely when you have the luxury of being able to be in a scene, on a set with a director and get to, talk about the scene, as opposed to just go, right, we're doing this, let's go. And you're like, okay, But that's about, as being an actor, you have to be prepared to do that. So you have to know what you're doing as well. So you have to come prepared with your lines learned and an idea of your character and an idea of where this scene is going, just in case that happens,
Yeah. There is a question I have been asking some performers. No names or anything like that required, but I'm always curious. I'm going to maybe just turn this into a game called Good Note, Bad Note.
Okay.
And I was wondering, do you have maybe any examples of like bad notes or good notes that you have been given on set or in a rehearsal room, where maybe just one piece of information or a suggestion really unlocked something for you in a positive way, or a note that was just unplayable?
I had one guy once, I can't remember his name. I had one director that said to me, "Can you be bigger but make it smaller?" And I said, "I have no idea what you mean by that." And he went, "Yeah, you can just make her bigger, but just bring it down a bit." And I was like, "You're going to have to show me, because I don't know what that means." And then he couldn't really show me. And that was quite interesting. Be bigger, but make it smaller is always something that's made me really laugh, because I think he just wanted to give me a note for the sake of giving me a note. I suppose a good note from any director is that, just, I've had lots, one of my favorite directors is a guy called Anthony Phillipson, and he's always been like, just breathe and take your time over it. Don't rush, just enjoy this moment, enjoy, the scene, whether it's like if you're angry in it, or if you're, you're crying or you're hysterical, enjoy the scene and just savor being on set. And that was a lovely note. It's this is your play area, so just play. Essentially what we do is we play.
You may have already answered this in what you just said, but I'm always curious about the set environment. And my question, I suppose, is, when you think of maybe your best work, in your opinion, are there common denominators in terms of what has facilitated that, in terms of maybe the sets, or maybe the focus again is on the script? But yeah, does that make sense?
It does. I worked with a director called Adrian Shergold, who's incredible, and his process was that you move around the set however you want to, and we'll follow you. Like, the camera will follow you. So don't be dictated by the camera. You do whatever you need to do to make this scene work, you actors, and we will just follow you, and we'll just, and that's kind of like, that's quite a rare thing, I think. When a director can just say, like, like, he's just so brilliant. Like, he'll take it. He's the sort of director that will take an 11-page scene and do it in one shot. Like, I've worked with him before. I did a thing called Wolfe with him, and he'd just be like, right, we've got 11 pages today. I want to do it in one shot. And so we'd spend 2 hours choreographing that, so that the camera got everybody and did all the lines and got everybody on screen for that time. And we did 11 pages in 4 hours. But it didn't feel like it was rushed, and it didn't feel like it was, that we were being compromised, that our performances were being compromised. That's testament to a brilliant director who exactly knows how to do it and get the best out of everybody. And it felt like a little mini play for 11 pages. And we did it about 8 or 9 times. And then when you watch it, it's like, oh God, that's amazing. How did he do that? And he's one of those people that just says, we'll work around you. And I've worked with quite a few directors that do that just say, this is your set, you do it the same, clearly, but we'll find you. And that's always a joy when you meet directors like that, who just go, here you go, you have it, and we'll work around you. Oh God, that's so exciting. We're not chained by, having to hit a mark or anything, which is also equally as important. I'm not taking that away, because that's also a lovely way to work. But when you get those directors that do that, it's like, oh, this is fun. This is going to be fun now.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
There was a question to jump back a little bit just to yourself as a performer. I was curious about when you are, be it prepping or just from a performance perspective, do you work from, earlier on, you mentioned actors being empathetic and you keep things maybe at a surface level. And I was curious about whether you work from the personal or the imaginary in terms of what you are bringing into the characters you are portraying.
I think I tend to work from the imaginary. I don't tend to think about anything. Like if I'm doing something that's really sad, like I have to cry, or and I say that actually sometimes it doesn't happen, and that's great, but I don't tend to pull on personal experiences in order to get a performance, because I don't know whether that's authentic. I like to kind of keep it in the character as much as possible, and whatever happens through that process, in terms of when I'm thinking about the performance and the character, that I think is the most truthful. So I don't tend to think of anything sad or anything happy or anything. I just it's usually the text that does it, actually. Like if I'm doing an emotional scene and the text is really good and really well written, it'll just happen anyway. It's like an organic thing. It just kind of, if you're in that moment and if you're totally focused on that scene, you don't need to think about anything personal, because the text and your performance and your character is doing that for you. So yeah, I very rarely, I don't think I've ever thought of anything personal to get a reaction or an emotion. It's always come from performance, I think.
Right.
Being in that moment, is where the truth lies.
Amazing. It's a question I've been asking all of the actors I've had on, because I'm always interested in the process post-performance as well. And what seems to occur when people bring personal into the work, it can be much harder to let go of it after the fact as well.
It's exhausting to do that. Like, I think I find you use so much more energy if it's personal, whereas if you're in it as the character and you're letting the character and the script do the work, you come out of it the other side feeling much more energized, and you can leave it at the door. Like, you can absolutely leave that straight away and it goes. You break character and it's like, that's great, should we do that again? Whereas I think if you're investing, if you're dragging up anything personal, that's more like therapy. It feels like more like it's like you're using your craft as your therapist. And sometimes that works for people, but for me, it's too exhausting. Whereas if you're in the moment with the character and the text, you come out of it and it's like, yeah, that's your job. You're doing your job. But that's my personal, it's whatever works for anybody else. Why you'd want to bring up personal stuff in order to get an emotional reaction, I just think let the text and the character do the work. That's what it's there for. The writing and the character is there to do the work for you. You're just the conduit for that. You're just the person that can bring that to life. That's your job,
Love it.
Like I keep saying, we're storytellers. We're here to convey stories to you to the best of our ability. It's, you don't need to see the process. You don't need to see how hard it is. You don't need to see the work. You just need to see the finished product.
Theatre versus screen, different mediums. Do you have a preference, or are they both so different in their own right that they can't compete with each other?
I think that for me, they're just so beautifully different. And I love, if I've done a play for a very long time, or if I've done play after play after play, I yearn to do a bit of television and film. And then the same thing applies if I've been doing loads of TV or film, then I want to do a play. I think both disciplines are, they're both incredibly different for me. They're very different. They demand different parts of you and different amounts of energy and different amounts of, discipline. But both, I couldn't do one and not the other. Both of those things are just such a joy, and they're both so terrifying and wonderful in their own right that I could never pick. I don't think anyone could ever ask me to pick to do one for the rest of my life, because I wouldn't know what to do, because they both bring such joy and terror at the same time. They're just wonderful. And I think, actors need both those things in order to kind of flourish and grow as a performer. They feed each other. Theatre feeds television and vice versa. They go together hand in glove, I think. But they're both very different. But one does need the other, I think.
Okay. I often ask a question, which is, what advice would you give to your younger self? But, and I hope you don't mind me asking, given that Joe and Grace are interested in becoming actors, what is the advice that you give to them in terms of pursuing a career as a performer?
Trust the process. Trust your instincts. Your instincts as a performer are usually right. I say to them, with Joe specifically at the moment, because he's going up for stuff and some things he's not getting. I say to him, it's not personal. Please don't take any kind of rejection in this industry as personal. It's literally preference, and it's literally fitting a certain thing that they're looking for. Don't give up. Never give up, because if you really love acting and it's really something that you have to do, you won't want to give up. There'll be a compulsion in you to keep going and to keep trying to fight for a job and to keep, fighting to work and to find work. And just practice. Keep your muscle memory of acting ready to go at any given moment, because you never know where you're going to be tomorrow with this job. That's what's so beautiful about it, is that you never know what you're going to do next. And it takes one phone call and your whole life changes. It can do, that's the beauty of it. And I think that's what spurs actors on to do it, is that you never know what's around the corner. It's a traveling circus and you never know where you're going to be next. And that's what's so beautiful about it. So just, enjoy the process of being an actor. I think that's what happens sometimes with actors, is like, oh God, I'm an actor, it's not working for me. It's not working for me. We never kind of enjoy the feeling of being an actor, and what the fact that you can change people's lives, and you can, change, like with this whole, there was that drama about the post office that was on recently. It's changed how the government are viewing, they're going to look after those people that were, hideously treated by the things like that. That's what actors and creatives and arts, that's what the arts do. It changes people and makes people fight and makes people strong, and it's a beautiful thing.
Totally. There's so much power in it. Would you say then that it was that love of acting, and you speak about it so passionately, that was the cornerstone of your resilience throughout your career, and particularly at the beginnings?
Yeah, definitely. I don't give up easily. I don't walk away from things easily. I don't take rejection personally. I think I've built up, in my 32 years of acting, I think I've built up a reputation of being somebody who is kind and considerate on set, and who is easy to work with, and who tries to cultivate a safe space on set where you can dare to fail and you can have fun. I think that's really important. I think developing a thick skin and knowing that none of it's personal is really important. And I think that's You know, I couldn't do anything else. You know, this is my life. You know, apart from my family, this is the most important thing in my life. You know, my job, because I think it changes. I think it can change people's lives, and I think it can make people's lives richer, like any art. You know,
Yeah.
art's not taken as seriously as it should be in this country. I think, you know, music, art, drama, all these things, they're just so fundamentally important for young children, like young kids growing up and young people and any ages, actually. You know, our art makes the world a better place.
I couldn't agree more. And I recently saw, I think there's more arts education funding cuts, and it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah. But also, you know, it's taking it away from, you know, people who need it the most. You know, you're taking away the freedom of expression from the people who need it most, from young kids who need it most at the moment. You know, it's heartbreaking. It's actually really offensive, I think, that you know, the most beautiful creative things in the world, like, you know, drama, theatre, music, art, all this literature, all these things are being taken away from a group of people in the world, in society, who need it the most. It makes me so angry.
You mentioned you would love to direct, and I was curious as to whether there were any particular plays that, if you could direct, this would be the one I want to do. Or would you like to work in an original space?
There's quite a few plays I'd like to direct. I'd like to direct. There's a play called The Collector, which is a two-hander, which is an incredible play. I don't know if it. I think it would work today. There's a load of Pinter plays I want to direct. I'd love to direct The Dumb Waiter. I'd like to direct. I'd love to do Macbeth. You know, I'm rereading lots of things at the moment, thinking, oh, that would be so much fun. But also, you know, new plays. It's, you know, short films. You know, I've got ideas for short films and things. I think, yeah, it's dipping my toe in. It's like daring to, you know, trusting that you can do it. You know, believing in yourself. So yes, there's quite a lot of things I'd like to do in terms of directing, and I think I'm veering towards that now. And there's a few things that I'd like to do.
Amazing.
Yeah, we'll see.
As we know, things can sometimes move quite slowly in this game, but hopefully something from a directing perspective materializes for you very soon, because I would love to see what you would do with it.
I've got a few people interested in doing things. Yeah, it's just me stepping forward into that and sort of like, you know, going, hi, this is a new, you know, this is a new thing for me. Don't, you know, it's not, yeah, having the courage to do it. But it's definitely something that I'm going to do within the next year, certainly.
All you need to do is look at your body of work and the directors you've worked with in film, television, and theatre. You would undoubtedly come to that with grace, I am sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very lucky. I do, you know, I do realise that I'm in a very fortunate position. You know, I love my job and I get to do it, you know, because lots of people don't. So I know that I'm in a very privileged position, and I don't ever take that for granted. You know, I never take the fact that I've worked with all these people and I still get to work. You know, at 53 years old, I'm still kind of working with lovely directors and being offered stuff. It's not something that I take for granted at all. I don't think you should. We're very lucky.
Is there anything else on the horizon, or anything we can expect to see you in soon?
Yeah, I'm about to start a play early summer at the Park Theatre, and it's a play about a journalist whose daughter gets raped, and it's about how she and her family deal with that. And it's an incredibly powerful piece of theatre, and it was something that's, you know, it's got a lot of humour in it. And it was when I was speaking to Jez, the director who runs the Park Theatre, we were talking about it and saying, you know, it's such a sensitive issue, and there is comedy in it, and it's about you know, it's going to be an interesting and quite complicated journey in order to kind of do it as like how we want to do it. And it's an incredibly beautiful piece of theatre, and it's wonderfully written, true story. So I'm just about to. It's a lot of work. I've got a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to do on it. So I'm starting that now. I'm prepping for that now, because this is one of the biggest roles I've had in theatre. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting journey, and scary and fun, but that's why we do it.
When do tickets go on sale?
I think around maybe beginning of June, possibly. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, you'll have to come.
I will.
Okay, I'll get you tickets.
Brilliant. I'm there. Well, Amanda Abbington, I just want to say, earlier on you said you wouldn't call yourself fabulous. I would call you fabulous. You are brilliant.
Oh gosh, thank you so much. That means so much. Thank you. And it's been so lovely talking to you. I love talking about my job to people who completely get it and understand it, and give it the platform that it deserves. You're amazing. You're wonderful. And I've had the best hour and a bit.
Me too. And I appreciate you so much, appreciate your time so much. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Cheers.
And that's a wrap on the wonderful Amanda Abbington. Thank you for listening to the Filmmaker's Playbook. If you're enjoying the show, please share it with a friend or follow and rate us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. As always, if you have feedback, questions, or topics you'd like me to cover on the show, please put them in the comments section on our Instagram page at the Filmmaker's Playbook Podcast. You can follow me on Instagram at Jason Branagan Director. You can find Amanda on Instagram at Amanda_Abbington74. Links and social media handles are in the show notes. Join me next week when I talk to First Assistant Director Ger Duffy. Until next time.